Hello, my name is Valentina Palacio. I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator for Beaufort County. Essentially, stormwater is really important, especially in our coastal region. Ways that residents can get involved and help positively impact stormwater management in our area is to be educated on stormwater practices, implement best management practices in your lawn. So some of these things can be rain gardens, having a rain barrel at your house to water your garden. It saves water, as well as reduces the amount of water that flows in our community. Also, you can implement pervious pavement in your lawn. So having a driveway made out of gravel or special pavers can help minimize stormwater runoff, because it will allow rainwater to absorb rather than on concrete driveway, it just runs off. So you can go check out the Brewer Memorial Park in Beaufort, South Carolina. They have examples of best management practices where you can see a tree box, which is a really unique best management practice where a tree can absorb a bunch of water through a system. You could also see the pervious pavement, as their parking lot is made out of pervious pavement. There is also a bioswale, and then also a vegetated retention pond. To find out more information, you can check out Beaufort County, South Carolina's stormwater page. We have resources on stormwater as well as other ways to better stormwater in our community. We will continue to host educational events where you can learn more about stormwater as well as other environmental topics such as recycling and composting. So be in the loop with all the presentations coming up, and follow us on social media, Beaufort County SC, and continue to keep our coastal region green. So thank you for joining in the presentation today, everyone. I'm going to be talking about stormwater. So it's Stormwater 101, and talking about specifically how stormwater impacts our coastal community. So stormwater in Beaufort County, as us being a coastal region, stormwater impacts us uniquely because we have a lot of heavy rainfall in our region as well. That coupled with high tides, sometimes it causes extreme flooding. Stormwater also affects coastal erosion in circumstances, and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more on how stormwater impacts the coastal region specifically. So I'm going to start with the history. Hi guys, thanks for joining. I'm going to start with the history of stormwater management. So depicted in this picture, this is the Cuyahoga River fire. Cuyahoga, thank you. Perfect. Yeah, so Thank you for the correction. Cuyahoga River. This is in Ohio, right? That's right. This is in Ohio, and this river actually caught fire 13 times before anybody was questioning anything going on. So actually the one that kind of caught the attention was a blaze of 1969, and the reason why this kind of was caught attention after 13 times was there was already a lot of environmental awareness around at this time. Rachel Carson had just authored the book Silent Spring, and then there was also a big Santa Barbara oil spill the same year that the 1969 blaze happened. So there was a lot more environmental issues at the forefront of the United States at this time. So this fire actually, or this 14th fire, was a big contributor to the formation of the EPA, which the EPA was then formed in 1970, so 1 year after the 1969 blaze. And then shortly after that, the EPA created the Clean Water Act, which is huge. It has so much to do with water conservation throughout the U.S., so that's a pretty big deal. And that all had to do with stormwater management. And the whole issues pertaining to the Cuyahoga River fires was essentially all the industry going on around that river were just dumping their chemicals, their oils, their gas, all the nasty byproduct that they were using from the industry in that area into the river. And so any little spark just would blaze the river. So that's kind of what was happening there. So just understanding stormwater. So the main thing that I want you all to know the definition of is stormwater runoff. So stormwater runoff is essentially just rainfall that flows over a ground surface, or I'm going to start using some vocab, impervious surface. So an impervious surface, as I have listed there, it's a surface where water can't be absorbed. So for example, concrete, water doesn't get absorbed into concrete. Rooftops, so metal roofs, water can't be absorbed through that. So impervious surfaces causes water to repel and then be kind of accumulate in certain areas more. So why is stormwater important? So stormwater plays a vital role in the replenishing of our groundwater system. So that's why it's really important to have a lot of areas of pervious surfaces, which are going to be areas where water can go through in order to be able to reach our groundwater reserve below the ground. So having that rainwater be able to go through to the ground is really crucial, because we pull water from wells. It gets there's underground systems that feeds wetlands, and animals use that for replenishing plants, trees, all of that type of stuff. So I'm getting a little bit technical here, but this is important to know when learning about stormwater, is understanding the MS4 permit. So Beaufort County operates under an MS4 permit, and right there I have listed what MS4 means. So quite literally, it's one word that starts with an M, and then 4 that starts with an S. So it's municipal separate storm sewer system. So essentially what all those words mean is we operate under 2 separate sewer systems. So as the diagram shows here on the picture, you see all your household wastewater, that all gets sent to the wastewater treatment plant. And that's in a different system. And on all our rainwater and all the runoff, so everything that the rainwater collects, it gets sent to the storm drains, and then all of that just gets sent to the waterways. In between there are some best management practices, which I'll touch on later on in the presentation, but there's kind of like obstacles for the water to kind of get less polluted. So there'll be retention ponds. There's different types of wetlands that also help absorb all the negative and pollution in that water that before it reaches our actual waterways. So the MS4 also places requirements on local communities to have MCMs, which is minimum control measures. One thing you're going to learn about stormwater, there's a lot of acronyms, so just disclaiming that. But minimum control measures are essentially, one of them is public education. So that's kind of where I comply for stormwater. I am MCM1. So I'm talk to the public, educate them, and that way we have better practices in the community. The next thing is kind of just an example. So what goes in must come out. So here on the top right, you see that's a storm drain. And then water is getting in there, and you see there's also some litter there. So if that litter does find a way to get through that grate, that's just going to end up in our ocean. So it's really important to try and clean up around storm drains whenever you can, and just be mindful to not throw anything down the storm drains. Some people throw their oil down there. Some people have thrown paint down there, a lot of your drinks. So trying to not do that, because that just goes straight into the marshes. And right here, this is kind of the example of what an outfall looks like. So the water that comes out of the stormwater system is an outfall, and that's what's depicted there. So a little bit more, it's a cool kind of graphic to show stormwater runoff. You could kind of see how it all trickles down in like a condensed diagram. So clearly it's raining over here, there's a roof, and then you see all of that kind of going into the storm drain, and then in this underground system, and then here is the water body that the water is getting drained into. So I just think that's a great diagram to show kind of the flow of stormwater runoff, because everything always flows downhill, and downhill is the ocean. It's kind of hard to think of when we're kind of, I mean, we're close to the water relatively here, but we're thinking of the rain falling here. We're not like, oh, that's going to the ocean right now. So it's important to kind of remember that all the rain always does end up there, less if it's not permeated into the ground. So this is a very neat kind of graphic to show different pollutants, like one of some of the most common pollutants in stormwater. So can you all name a few things that you see in the diagram? It's kind of highlighted, but do you want to see what's going on there?
Dog poop.
Dog poop, that's for sure. Yes, that's a pollutant that's getting washed into the storm drain. What else?
Fertilizer in the kinds.
Exactly. That's what that is. That's fertilizer getting washed away. So that's excess fertilizer, because the fertilizer that's needed by the plant, it would have already absorbed it by now. But that's just too much. So the plant doesn't take any more than it needs. So that's excess fertilizer. And then the last thing is kind of here, the leaky card. So they're releasing all those fluids that are toxic, and all of that is getting washed into the storm drain. And as you can see here, ending up where wildlife is, and the fish that we eat, the fish that are part of a large part of our culture, part of our community. So very important to be mindful of all those things. So yeah, I kind of have that right there showing up exactly what it is. So oil and chemicals leaking from the car, excess fertilizer getting washed away from the bushes, and then pet waste bacteria being washed away. So these are all considered non-point source pollution. So essentially is you can't pinpoint as easily where the pollution is coming from, because this happens everywhere. Like, it's really hard for us to be managing people's leaky cars, So that's why it's on us as the residents to try and do our part to minimize non-point source pollution. And an example of point source pollution can be a cracked stormwater pipe that is oozing water. That's very easily identified as an issue, so we're able to point it out very easily. So that's that. So why stormwater pollution matters. I'm always going to be kind of circling back to the major themes. So reiterating what I've kind of talked on. Stormwater runoff, it picks up pollutants and it flows into streams, lakes, and groundwater. All those pollutants, they harm aquatic life. And humans and land animals also can become sick because we consume that polluted water sometimes. So animals that are drinking out in the wild, drinking polluted water in puddles, or us ingesting from diseased fish or shellfish. There's a beautiful oyster roast, a very common low country thing. And the oysters are very crucial to the biodiversity and ecosystem. So making sure that they're healthy for our ecosystem as well as for our consumption is very important. So these are some of the main causes for stormwater runoff. Some of these we can control, some of them we can't. But the first one is human activity. So this has to do with buildings, so development, parking lots, roads, other hard surfaces that prevent water from soaking into the ground. So that causes excess stormwater runoff. Soil type is also a factor. So certain types of soil may not absorb water as well. Often overly tilled soil doesn't absorb water as well because it's just dead soil. Essentially, there's not enough nutrients, not anything that needs to eat up the water or drink up the water. So that could be an example of that. And then just other soil varieties just don't absorb water as well. Saturation, this kind of goes hand in hand with the next one, but ground that is already saturated from previous rain events can't absorb more water. So maybe in a zone that floods heavily and frequently, if there's already a very saturated ground and it rained like 5 days ago, but it rained so much and it was flooded for so long, if it rains again 5 days later, it's not going to be able to soak up more water. It has as much water as it can hold. So that's another cause for excess stormwater runoff. And then another thing is rainfall intensity. Obviously, when there's huge amounts of rains and it's raining cats and dogs, the ground can only absorb as fast as it can. So if you're thinking of a lot of water coming down, there isn't enough time for the water to soak into the ground because of that intensity. So some unique stormwater challenges for the Low Country. So we receive a lot of high rainfall in the summer months. This leads to increased runoff, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Also, coastal sensitivities. So stormwater matters that much more because it's not only affecting life on land, so with the flooding and all of that that's happening, but it trickles down to the life in the water, so aquatic life as well. So it's not just us that are can see the negative effects of this. And then also rapid development. Our area is rapidly increasing in population, in size, and development. And there is just more impervious surfaces, so surfaces where water can't go through and be absorbed. Therefore, it causes a higher volume in flooding of water in our area. So those are all kind of unique challenges to us. So impact of stormwater in the community, kind of like what I've touched on. Flooding is a big thing. There's a lot of there could be a cause for localized flooding. This impacts homes. This impacts businesses and various types of infrastructures that get uprooted or get so soaked that they collapse due to flooding. Another thing is water quality issues. As I've talked about numerous times, the pollution gets carried into our waterways. We have a very high percentage of E. coli bacteria in our waterways. So that's something that we try and emphasize. Proper maintenance of septic systems. That's a huge cause to that sort of pollution in our waterways, as well as picking up pet waste, which is a very simple way of minimizing bacteria in our system. And then erosion. So heavy runoff can erode shorelines as well. It can erode waterways. So if we have too much area of water, that's too much water in a given area because of so many buildings and areas where water doesn't permeate, that could cause for our rivers to just overflow completely, and that causes them to just open wide and lose kind of their normal track. And that impacts habitats, that impacts the landscape that we've had. So it's very crucial. So let's talk about ways that we can fix this, or ways that the stormwater industry is bettering and managing stormwater. So stormwater best management practices, BMPs, another acronym for you all. So best management practices are sustainable solutions to address stormwater runoff and minimize its impact on our environment. Pretty straightforward definition. So BMPs, they aim to manage the flow, volume, and quality of stormwater by mimicking natural processes. So essentially, BMPs are kind of engineered sort of systems that I'll go over in a couple slides that help so retention ponds, they can hold a larger volume of water. So creating a hole in the ground helps manage volume on plain and on flat land. So that could be a BMP. And BMPs, they could be both structural or non-structural. So I don't know if any of you all are familiar with rain gardens. That's an example of a BMP. Retention ponds, like I mentioned, is also another example of BMPs. And permeable pavements. So gravel can be an example of BMPs. Certain pavers that kind of have the grass that comes out in the middle of them that are kind of diamond shaped, that's a BMP as well. And then the non-structural ones could be public education. So what we're doing here, so we're helping stormwater by doing a BMP right now. And then proper disposal of hazardous waste. So just making sure your car isn't leaking, making sure you're not throwing chemicals outside on the ground. That's practicing best management practices. And then also just minimizing impervious surfaces. So when you can, try, like you're adding a patio to your house, or you're doing something and you could not use concrete or asphalt and instead use a pervious surface, that is a best management practice. So green infrastructure, this is part of best management practices. These are kind of some examples in the diagram that I show there. But they're nature-based. It's a nature-based approach to managing stormwater that uses plants, soil, permeable surfaces to absorb and filter rainwater, reducing flooding and pollution. So, as you can see here, there's kind of like green roots. You could kind of see this more in metropolitan areas like cities and whatnot, because they do have a lot of concrete and everything. That's a really good green infrastructure mechanism for cities to use, to be able to like kind of capture some of that rainfall. And then here's rainwater harvesting. So if you all are familiar with rain barrels, that's kind of something that you could have at your house as well, where from your downspout, the rain comes and is collected, and you can use that to water your plants. It has a lot of great sort of additives in there. Like the rainwater is just really good for your plants. It has a lot of good nutrients. So that's also another benefit of that. And then here you can kind of see the permeable pavement. So you can see it's raining here and the water is able to go through because it's the paving that allows water to go through. And then here's a storm drain. So it's those things that you see on the side of the roads that are kind of inlets. I used to not know what they were, and I was very interesting that all of that is just the stormwater sewer system, and stuff like that. So that's a great kind of example of it. I have another example of green infrastructure. So as you can see here, just very simple green infrastructure is conserve areas and forested land. So just wild land is a form of green infrastructure because it's good for the environment. So trees and planter boxes, those are great. Sort of the stormwater curb extensions, that also helps. The rain barrels, green works, and then rain gardens are depicted here. These are a little bit more technical, but these are bioswales. It's kind of specific native plants or special plants that are from our area, so they know how to absorb a lot of water, and they have long roots, so they drink a lot more water. And some non-native plants, they may have smaller root systems or just die when there's too much water. So that's kind of the type of vegetation that they have in these grow zones or bioswales. Next, so easy ways that you all can help. So you could kind of see there, planting native vegetation is really great. If you're ever looking to redo your lawn, or kids, if you're ever doing any gardening with your parents and they want some plants or nice things on the lawn, like trying to ask your local nursery for local and native plants, because like I said before, the longer root systems are way more resilient in our area and are meant to live in our area, so they know how to handle it. Also reducing impervious surfaces, so replacing concrete driveways with permeable paving materials. So just any areas that you can kind of where water can seep through. And then also using fertilizer sparingly. So trying to not over fertilize, or if you get your lawn taken care of, speaking with your landscaper and just asking them to not over fertilize anything in your lawn. And here's just another cool diagram that I think is pretty fascinating. So you can see all those really long root systems. And these are examples of native plants. So here's turf grass. So essentially, the height of turf grass has the exact height of their root system. So that's turf. How much water do you think they want to drink? Not that much. How much do these want to drink? A lot of water. A lot of water. So that's why native plants are really helpful. And that kind of it's a good example of the underground system and how that works. So more ways to help with stormwater management that you all can kind of take part in. Cleaning up storm drains. So kids, whenever you're at the school, if you have one near your school or and you're outside, and it's obviously in a safe area, like you could get some friends and get together and clean up a storm drain. If you see some cups, some chip bags, whatever, in the storm drain, because that prevents it from getting into the ocean. So whatever you can to clean up storm drains if you see them. That way also it handles more water and it's not blocked up by trash. So water is able to flow through how it's supposed to. Also getting a rain barrel, looking into a rain barrel system for your house. Setting it up in an area near a lot. If you have a garden, it's really great. If you have a lot of plants at your house, really great. It saves money also because you're not using your your house water, your city water. And then another thing is planting a rain garden. Just you definitely have to consult a professional on it if a rain garden is fit for your lawn. And there's certain things like it should be a minimum of 10 feet away from your house. But a rain garden is really neat. If you don't know what it is, I could give you more information or just looking it up. Rain gardens are great. They help with flooding in areas, and just staying educated. So what you all are doing now, just coming to things like this, getting to know different organizations in our community that do work with stormwater because there are a lot. And one actually, as I mentioned here, Clemson Extension, their specialty is water. So stormwater in general. They have a lot of great courses, a lot of cool activities and whatnot that talk about stormwater. So getting involved that way would be really great. Sweet. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm really glad that we had some people show up. You all were awesome. Thank you for coming. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to catch me. I can give you my card, and always email is a great way of reaching out to me. Also, here's a link to BC Connect if you all already have access to that. It's kind of just Beaufort County resident in general to report anything on there. It's good to have that. And then I also am trying to compile a mailing list for environmental related topics and presentations like this. So if you wanted to be a part of that, this is a QR code where you can kind of fill out that form and you'll get notified when things like this is happening. But yeah, here is my contact information. And then I also have cards if you would want that. But yeah, thank you. That's it for today. Thank you.